This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
A close race shaping up between Malawi President Peter Mutharika and his main challenger Lazarus Chakwera. Clashes continue near Tripoli even as Libya's top two protagonists meet world leaders. And Botswana lifts a ban on elephant hunting. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also ahead this hour. In business, top officials re-elected in South Africa's Mineral Council. And in sports, World Football governing body FIFA abandons plans for a 48-team 2022 World Cup. Well, let's start the hour in Malawi, where vote counting is underway for the third day at the National Tally Center in Blantyre. Presidential results from 76% of polling stations are now in, which accounts for about 3,819 out of over 5,000 polling stations across the country. According to the latest official figures from last night, only about a third of the total polling stations, President Peter Mutharika and main opposition leader Lazarus Chakwera were tied in early results. Progress has been slow and the Electoral Commission is urging for patience as final figures are tabulated. Well, so far, Mutharika, representing the leading Democratic Progressive Party, currently stands at 37.01%. Chakwera, hoping to revive the former ruling Malawi Congress Party, is at 37.65%, and in third at 20.78% is Vice President Saulos Chilima for the United Transformation Movement, running, of course, against his boss. Numbers for the parliamentary and local government councillors' elections are also trickling in, and the few anomalies that have occurred have been acknowledged by electoral authorities. Well, let's get to the very latest on this now from CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa. She is following the results tally from the vote counting centre in Blantyre. Wilkista, as we understand, the Electoral Commission was expected to give a briefing this morning. What came out of that briefing from the Electoral Commission?
Thank you, Lindy. Well, there was supposed to have been a briefing just updating the results from the results that we saw streaming in yesterday. However, that briefing has not taken place yet. And the reason it hasn't taken place is because there was another briefing scheduled by the election observers. These are the African Union, the European Union, and the Commonwealth observers, talking about their observations just during the election period. They do have to be present at the National Tallying Center in order for the announcements to be made, and therefore at this point they are at another venue across town, so they will have to come in later, and then the Malawi Electoral Commission can then announce the next batch of results. However, what we are seeing on the board is that the results are inching closer to the 80% mark, which means it is possible that by the end of today the full results may be announced by the Malawi Electoral Commission. Are only working with the election results that came in yesterday that did put both the incumbent Peter Mutharika and his challenger, the closest challenger, who is Chakwera, just neck and neck, really. Both of them at 37%, although Chakwera did have a slight lead then, and therefore the country is waiting to see what happens in the next batch of results, who retains the lead, who takes over the first position, and generally what happens as the results continue to stream in from various corners of the country. Lindy.
Well, it's quite interesting to hear you say, of course, that we're almost at 80% of the votes counted and that we might have a result by the end of the day. Considering that, what's the mood then like amongst these these three main presidential contenders and, of course, their supporters?
Well, right now, I would tell you that we are in Blantyre, which is really now the heart of this operation, given that this is where all the results are going to be announced from. And it is very quiet. Malawians have woken up and gone to work as usual. There isn't much activity at the National Tallying Center, apart from the observers and the journalists. There isn't much activity around this area. The candidates are also just keeping mum. They're staying away from public areas. They're staying away from the National Tallying Center. Each of them probably just watching from where they are, waiting to see the direction the results take, and then they will be able to comment on them. So at this point, I would say that it is really, really very quiet in Blantyre. There's an air of expectation, an air of anticipation, but until those official results come from the Malawi Electoral Commission, which has been categorical in stating that nobody should pay any attention to any other results apart from the ones that it will be announcing. So at this point, it is just really a waiting game, and here in Blantyre, it's very calm, it's very peaceful, just an air of expectation and of waiting. Lindy.
And indeed, of course, that highly anticipated update for the Electoral Commission, no doubt, will be very telling. Thank you so much, Wakista Nyaba, joining us there live from Blantyre. Let's turn to news from Libya now, where fighting is still ongoing between Khalifa Haftar's forces and troops from the UN-backed government. Violent clashes were reported on Tuesday as the UN warned of a long and bloody war if fighting does not stop. It called for greater efforts to stem the flow of arms to the North African country. The international body is calling for an end to violence and the protection of civilians, but Haftar recently ruled out an immediate ceasefire as he held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron. More than 500 people have been killed and thousands of others wounded since Haftar launched his offensive to take Tripoli in early April. Let's go to Somalia now, where the UN has been warning of a major humanitarian crisis brought on by harsh drought conditions. The long rains that usually sweep across East Africa between March and May have failed. 2 million Somalis are now already food insecure. Combined with ongoing armed conflict and perpetual internal displacement, the situation is expected to deteriorate in the months ahead. Let's hear more now from the UN Humanitarian Affairs Agency.
The humanitarian situation is rapidly deteriorating due to severe drought conditions that have spread from northern and central areas throughout the country. 2 consecutive rainy seasons have failed, resulting in critical water shortages, widespread crop failure, and diminished livestock conditions. At this point in the season, any rainfall that is received will be too little and too late to reverse the impact of the drought. Since February, the acute food insecurity has already increased by 10%. The situation is expected to worsen. By July, 5.4 million people, including 1 million children, will be uncertain of their next meal.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, Botswana lifts a ban on elephant hunting. And all eyes on Ramaphosa's new cabinet after his election by the parliament.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. AfricaLive. Find your voice.
Data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed.
And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
I'm reporting from Nairobi City Center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference.
At the heart of Lagos City, in the business district of Victoria Island, Terra culture is growing into a hub for the performing arts in Nigeria.
There's no society that is whole without arts or religion or culture.
Bolanle Austin Peters has created that platform where shows are running every month. Different things are happening right here at the Terra Arena.
She's brought a lot of youngsters' dream to life.
For self-taught theatre director Bolanle Austin Peters, her quest to revolutionize the theatre industry in Nigeria is coming along quite fine.
AfricaLive. Find your voice.
Botswana has lifted a ban on elephant hunting that was previously imposed in 2014. The country has the largest population of elephants with about 130,000 animals. The government says that it will ensure the reinstatement of hunting is done in an orderly and ethical manner. The conflict between humans and animals has grown over the years, with an increase in the number of elephants since around 1991. The animals at times destroy crops, kill people and damage ecosystems. The move to allow hunting may likely trigger a reaction from conservationists. Critics say that tourism numbers may be affected, which accounts for the second largest source of income in the country after diamond mining. Now, Mauritius could soon be in control of the Chagos Islands that were taken away by Britain in 1965. This after UN member states voted in favour of a resolution that urged Britain to withdraw from the islands within 6 months. The resolution was presented by African countries.
For more than 5 decades, Mauritius has argued that jurisdiction over Chagos Islands should be returned to them. And today, victory was on their side.
The decolonization of Mauritius has not yet been completed and will not be completed until Mauritius is able to exercise sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago, which the International Court of Justice found, with no dissenting voice, to be an integral part of the territory of Mauritius.
Mauritius had argued it was forced to give up the island in 1965 in exchange for independence. But the UK has refuted the allegations.
The United Kingdom is not in doubt about our sovereignty over the British Indian Ocean Territory. It has been under continuous British sovereignty since 1814. Contrary to what has been said today, it has never been part of the Republic of Mauritius. In 1965, the Mauritian Council of Ministers freely entered into an agreement to detach the British Indian Ocean Territory in return for a range of benefits, including fishing rights and natural and marine resources. The agreement also included a commitment by the United Kingdom to cede the territory, and I use the word cede here deliberately, not give back, to cede the territory when it is no longer needed for defense purposes.
Britain further says a joint military base with the US built on one of the largest islands, Diego Garcia, was part of an agreement to help keep the world safe from terrorism and piracy. It maintains that it will hand the islands to Mauritius when they are no longer needed for defense purposes. But Mauritius argues the Chagos Archipelago was part of its territory and was taken unlawfully by the UK in 1965.
Mauritius is extremely disappointed with the stance taken by the UK. So is Her Majesty's Leader of the Opposition in the UK, who has made clear his respect and support for the court's conclusions. We are all the more disappointed to see that all the arguments, both jurisdictional and on the merits, that the court has flatly rejected are being repeated here, more aggressively than ever before. It feels like we are back in 1965.
This is the second time in 2 years that Britain had to defend its ownership of the Chagos Islands at the United Nations. Chamwono, CGTN.
Well, let's get you more on this story. We're joined now from London by CGTN's Richard Bestick. Richard, a very decisive victory there for Mauritius at the United Nations. Tell us about the reaction, though, in London. Of course, we saw yesterday that the UK was not very happy.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine the Foreign Office is very happy. The Foreign Office has actually issued a reaction statement saying the UK doesn't recognise the claim to sovereignty by Mauritius, pretty much repeating, as you heard in that report there, the claims before the UN General Assembly. And it said it would stand by its earlier commitment to hand over control of the islands when they're no longer needed for defence purposes. That commitment, though, Lindy, has as yet no timetable attached to it, so it will be regarded with limited confidence by the UN's General Assembly and probably doesn't meet the ruling by the UN's High Court, which said Britain should leave the islands, quote, as rapidly as possible. The vote itself amounts to a significant diplomatic setback for the UK. Just 5 other nations voted with Britain against the UN motion, and that included the United States, which shares the island with the UK as a military site. 116 nations voted against the UK. Many more, including close allies like Germany and France, abstained. So, Lindy, possibly not a high point in British international relations.
Absolutely, but tell us more about this Chagos Islands, particularly with regards to the strategic significance it holds for the UK. You also mentioned the United States, which might explain why London is so adamant about not giving it up.
Well, strategically, the islands are positioned midway between the African continent, South Asia and Australasia. Britain argues that the joint UK-US defence facility there has helped keep people around the world safe from terrorism, organised crime and piracy. Critics say the remote geography has also made the place perfect for dark ops from the world of espionage. The fundamental question before the General Assembly was whether the dispute was a matter of decolonisation, as you heard from the representative of Mauritius making that claim before the UN General Assembly, or whether it was a bilateral deal between Britain and Mauritius. The UK claims they bought the islands in 1965 for around $4 million. The government of Mauritius says it was compelled to give up the islands as part of a deal over independence. Perhaps, Lindy, the saddest element of this decades-old tale is that between 1967 and 1973, the entire population of the islands were forcibly evicted to make way for the military and have been kept from their ancient home ever since. Described by the Prime Minister of Mauritius, Kumar Jagnnath, as akin to a crime against humanity.
Certainly not a proud moment in UK history. Richard, surely the United Kingdom can't ignore the fact that 116 member states of the United Nations voted in favour of Mauritius. Is this something that, do you think the UK will continue to fight?
I think from the statements made to the UN General Assembly and that reaction I was talking about there from the Foreign Office, this morning in London, it doesn't look like there'll be a change of attitude by Britain anytime soon, despite claims by the government of Mauritius that it would allow the military base to continue operating in, quote, accordance with international law if it were given control of the islands. The two sides will continue to talk, but Lindy, it would seem in the light of the overwhelming defeat at the UN that Britain isn't in a mood to make substantial concessions yet.
So even after 5 decades, this tussle over Chagos Islands may indeed drag on. Thank you so much, Richard Bestick, joining us from London. Now let's turn to South Africa, where Cyril Ramaphosa has been elected by lawmakers as the nation's president. Ramaphosa is also leader of the ruling ANC party, and he will be inaugurated as president on Saturday. And as Rene Delcam reports, the deputy president, David Mabuza, was not sworn in after he requested a postponement, and that's due to an integrity probe.
South Africa's Chief Justice, Mogoeng presided over most of Wednesday's first sitting of the National Assembly of the country's 6th democratic parliament.
In terms of Section 48 of the Constitution, members of the National Assembly must swear or affirm faithfulness to the Republic and obedience to the Constitution. Nothing else. Obedience to the Constitution before they begin to perform their functions.
He swore in President-elect Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as 400 members of parliament from the ruling African National Congress, the opposition Democratic Alliance, economic freedom fighters, and many other smaller parties.
And I accordingly declare the Honorable Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa duly elected President of the Republic of South Africa.
So I will be a president for all South Africans and not just a president for the African National Congress and those who voted.
Deputy President David Mabuza requested that his swearing-in be postponed, following allegations that he'd brought his party, the African National Congress, into disrepute. He asked that he be given an opportunity to address the ANC's Integrity Commission before being sworn in the National Assembly. The focus now shifts to President-elect Ramaphosa's inauguration in Pretoria on Saturday, followed by the announcement of the new cabinet he selects to help him run his country. President Ramaphosa is under pressure to come up with a smaller cabinet with members who have not been tainted by allegations of corruption or other scandals. He's promised a leaner, more efficient, balanced cabinet, which he believes will be welcomed by South Africans. Rene Delcam, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
The United Nations mission in South Sudan has embarked on training staff of the South Sudanese Human Rights Commission in its efforts to put an end to all human rights violations. South Sudan experienced a surge in human rights violations during its 5-year civil war. With the recently signed peace accord, the world's youngest nation is focused on rebuilding its institutions as it hopes to find lasting peace.
Sort of a refresher also going forward in terms of monitoring investigations, documentation, and tailoring it to the context of South Sudan and emerging issues in the country.
I think these days there is some improvement for environment or human rights. There are no much violation in some area, but in the previous month there's a lot of violation and people that are appearing, and a lot of human rights violations have taken place. But currently, I think the situation, there's a bit of an improvement.
To Senegal now, where a centre has been built to provide employment for women. The initiative aims to stem the rural exodus to urban centres through the promotion of income-generating activities.
The Ngudian Centre is a model for the socio-economic integration of women. It is located in the region of Thais, about 90 kilometers from the capital, Dakar. Over 4,500 members earn their income from the processing of local crops such as maize, groundnuts and millet.
We are organized into teams, and each team has specific work days and specific daily duties, so that everyone can benefit from the center. As of now, we have 10 machines, and each machine allows us to perform a certain task. These machines can crush or grind about 200 kilos of cereals per day, depending on what we have in stock. Our product prices vary by weight.
The Ngudian Women's Group has been in existence since 1985. Since the construction of the center in March this year, thousands of women have earned income from the sale of locally processed products. Some say they no longer have any incentive to migrate to urban centers like Dakar.
This work gives me a certain autonomy and a lot of experience. Everything here is beneficial. Had we had this unity in place in the past, people would not have left the commune to go to the capital. But for some time now, they have been coming back because of this processing unit.
We have set up these infrastructures to effectively fight rural exodus of women and young people. To achieve this, we have understood that women must be empowered, and this autonomy can only be possible if they are properly trained. That is why we are investing in their training so that they can support themselves and preserve early childhood.
This center costs more than $85,000 and caters to women from 15 different localities of the Ngudian region. With the support of the municipality, they have also succeeded in setting up a community health cooperative. Their wish is to obtain more funding to expand their activities. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
And over in Nigeria, where more than 90% of the country's population is at risk of malaria, infection is said to be high due to many delays in seeking testing and treatment for the deadly disease. An e-health company has partnered with a pharmaceutical chain to subsidize the cost of treatment and roll out rapid malaria testing across 700 community pharmacies. CGTN's Brian Toussaint reports.
Ijeoma Imezue is visiting her local pharmacy in Abuja, Nigeria. She is once again being tested for malaria. This time, she will not shoulder the cost alone if the results are positive. She is covered by health insurance.
It made it easier for me to get to a pharmacy that is registered with Wella Health, and it's affordable, it's cheap. I pay for a month, I do monthly subscription, and I can go as much as I want to talk about malaria and tell them I have malaria, and I'll get tested and I'll get the drugs.
Registered customers can freely access malaria testing. Normally, malaria tests can cost as much as $10 to $20. With insurance, they pay a flat fee of just over $1 a month. Patients who test negative are given immune boosters.
We follow the WHO guidelines, which says that we must do a rapid test at least to determine the status of this person before you give out malaria drug. And incidentally, I could tell you a high proportion of patients who walk in, when we do these tests, we find out that they don't even have malaria. It might be stress or other kind of problems that is masquerading as malaria. And so we save them from self-medication and taking the wrong medicine.
A whole lot of people die from malaria every year in Nigeria. And we cannot just leave government alone to do this. We individuals, we also need to come up with an idea, with a platform that will make this malaria easy to treat.
Nigeria is reported to have the highest cases of malaria infection globally. About 51 million cases and 207,000 deaths are recorded annually. Nigeria's caseload accounts for 30% of all cases in Africa. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Let's go to Cote d'Ivoire now, where a group of women have turned to door-to-door campaigns to educate and help fellow Ivorians obtain legal documents that establish their rights. Specialists from the country's Women's Legal Aid Association hope to help thousands of people gain access to the state and reduce statelessness-related issues in the country.
Delays in declaring birth, historic migrants, gaps in nationality laws have been cited as major reasons for statelessness in the country. And without proper citizenship, thousands will live without protection of the law, have the right to education, formal jobs, or to hold property.
I'm afraid I never got my papers. Where will they travel to? Look at me, I'm an old man. Trying to run around to get my documents in order will be hard for me. But if I had them at my age, it will be good, because then my children would have them if they needed them.
The process of getting full nationality papers is costly and time-consuming. The legal specialists encourage the Ivorians they meet to sign up with them and afterward take the official request to a court to expedite the process.
We're getting them registered, taking down all the information so that they can be identified. And you just have to say to the official, I gave birth right here in the village. Even if we don't have identity papers, we still get to declare this birth.
In 2015, 15 member states of the regional bloc ECOWAS agreed to work to reduce statelessness. Cote d'Ivoire has already established new laws for late registration of births, return of identity documents, and transcription of birth certificates. The goal now is to have new laws that will make the path to identity cards and even nationality much smoother. Chombono, CGTN.
Coming up in your business news. Senegal hosts the second edition of Africa Communication Week.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in. See, business in Africa is high risk. After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
AfricaLive.
In your business news, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta has presided over the launch of Kenya's first mortgage refinancing company. The financial institution will fall under the Central Bank of Kenya's supervision. It is expected to enable commercial banks to access money for onward lending for mortgages. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has that story.
Let us appreciate the Kenya Mortgage Refinery Company with a lot of...
Kenya has just launched its first mortgage refinancing company. Its mandate is to make it easier for banks to access long-term funds for cheaper home loans. The government owns a 20% stake in the firm, while the private sector has an 80% share.
The Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company will be expected to provide fixed rate, long-term, low-interest funding to primary mortgage lenders, which would be passed on to home buyers. Fixed to be in control of their monthly commitments and afford their homes.
The World Bank has approved a $250 million loan to go towards mortgages for affordable housing. The Africa Development Bank, on the other hand, gave $100 million towards the same objective. KMRC will raise debt from markets, including mortgage-backed bonds, to lend to banks and cooperatives using their mortgage loan contracts with customers as security.
So when you look at the cost of a mortgage, it's significantly contributed by the tenor. The shorter it is, the more expensive it is, and which is what is missing in this market.
Some of the challenges facing would-be homeowners include high land prices, tough mortgage conditions like high interest rates of 12% and over, as well as short loan tenures of 5 years or less. In comparison with South Africa, where the ratio is 1-to-1, the cost of paying a mortgage in Kenya is on average 6 times what one would pay for rent.
And according to the Central Bank of Kenya, the total outstanding mortgage debt in 2017 is only about 2.7% of GDP, which shows clearly that in Kenya, the industry is still very small. South Africa, as an example, boasts of a mortgage sector accounting for approximately 31% of its GDP.
The National Treasury is developing a credit guarantee scheme. Once operational, it will support millions of credit-worthy potential borrowers who currently cannot access loans as they do not have a formal salary. The plan is to get banks lending to people on low or irregular incomes and support the Kenyan government's plan to build 500,000 affordable homes in the next 5 years. Alexandria Majala for CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
The Minerals Council of South Africa has re-elected all its top officials back into office. This comes as the council held its annual general meeting in Johannesburg. South Africa's mining industry is currently under pressure, with some of its members facing challenging times. CGTN's Angela Coppola attended the AGM and filed this report.
The South African mining sector is still under pressure, and that's despite an uptick in commodity prices. And according to analysts, that's because the mines aren't taking advantage of the increased prices quickly enough.
So mechanically, there has been recently about a year lag. So mechanically, we should be turning shortly. But I'm afraid the companies, the very fact of the 1 year lag is because they can't respond quick enough. And the inhibitors are very well known. I mean, it's electricity and it's Transnet and it's the harbours and so on.
Mining and Eskom are joined at the hip. If Eskom fails, we fail. That's how critical restoring our global competitiveness and the reliability of supply are key issues.
One of the often heard criticisms from business is that the lack of policy certainty leads to investment decisions being postponed. In the mining sector, that focus has shifted from the mining charter, which has been broadly agreed to environmental issues.
There's a transition in the environmental legislation, and there are 3 sets of them, and they are not finalized. And what is often happening is that one department acts.
You can't put in place policies that are certain and predictable but which are uncompetitive. So we need to improve our competitiveness.
Yes, and if the Eskom electricity prices aren't managed differently and brought down, we're definitely going to see more consolidation in the sector in the very near term. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A South African mall owner who manages some of the biggest retail developments in Johannesburg will soon ban the use of plastic bags in its shopping centres. While some African countries have banned plastic bags completely, South Africa is still slow to do so.
Use. Liberty 2 Degrees has taken a bold step to make its malls plastic-free. More than 20 million people frequent the group's shopping centres every year, which includes the popular Sandton City.
To just buy a plastic bag means you just pay away for the problem. That's not going to save our oceans. Taking the bags out and bringing other alternatives to plastic into this environment, that's what we are after. And
plastic bags a year. It's environmentally damaging, but cheaper than greener options.
There are such a myriad of opportunities to start new businesses, to help new entrepreneurs that will do good for the environment, that will go back into the ground and don't actually damage the
provides work for women who cannot find jobs.
If we can create a demand for our bags, then we can make bags and sell them. And the hope and the plan is to provide people who are shopping with alternatives to plastic bags and giving them an opportunity to buy a bag from this project in Alex.
The movement to get rid of single-use plastics is growing. Liberty's decision to ban packets completely may spark a significant change in consumer habits, which has been difficult to break. Chilishara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Tunisian government has introduced a pro-social security system to allow them to benefit from government health and pension services. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi tells us more.
Ahmini, translated as Protect Me, is a social security and health coverage program initiated by the government. The project aims to broaden the base of affiliates of the National Social Security Fund, CNSS, among rural women working in different conditions and not benefiting from any social coverage.
This is an extraordinary project which guarantees the rights of women working in the agricultural sector. Rural women in Tunisia do not have access to social services. They do not have time, the transportation means and money. Now the administration comes to rural areas.
Parliamentarians estimate that 500,000 women in rural areas will benefit from this program.
It's very difficult for the state to know the exact number of women working in the exploited. The government project will protect their rights.
Authorities stress the simplicity of the registration process, which takes place through the payment of social security contributions from a mobile phone.
I've been working in the agricultural sector for 20 years without social security. My mother died while working in...
Delegates of the Ahmini program are now touring the rural areas across Tunisia as part of a campaign to register women farmers. Tunisian authorities have explained the popularity of the new social security program by the simplification of the registration process and the...
Coming up, South African artists showcase their best work in downtown Johannesburg.
The greatest journeys. The greatest...
The locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the one. So let's explore.
The showcase brings together works by both emerging and established artists and is being hosted at the Bag.
The Bank Factory artists
provide subsidized studios,
share in the diversity of cultures and create works in a freely accessible environment.
My home, and anytime there's an opportunity to kind of come along and see what's new from some of the new artists, some of the new residents, and even some of the art
intends to illustrate a diverse emerging group of artists. They gain invaluable experience from the art gurus here.
Technique is very important to ensure that your artwork, and you need to persevere.
All the works here are by African artists.
Art galleries here in South Africa are still very to be quite critical for especially emerging young artists. Yoli Sanjamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Africa's lions are fast disappearing. The big cat population is now down to just 20,000, meaning lions are critically endangered in some ecotourism operators. They're trying to reverse the decline and double the lion population